And the difference is that the Dalit has a yud on the back, which creates a type of poverty, which is really a good type of holy poverty, because it means that you're a receiver. And since you're a total receiver, that means you can contain basically everything. Nothing's withheld from you, just like a student who wants to receive from the Rabbi. The more bitul, the more you can get. So we went on to basically say that this is the sphere of Malchus, which wants to receive from a sphere is higher than it. And so far we said there's sort of two levels of bitul that Malchus can achieve. One is Ze'iris Garma, which means to make herself smaller and smaller, and then Leis Le Magar Maklum, Leis La Magar Maklum, she winds up having nothing at all. And we said that's like the moon, which brought us into Os Gimel, which is like the Rebbe does a short chazar of the Maimer about Rosh Chodesh Sivan. Right, it says Bayom Hazeh Bao Midbar Sinai. And what was the idea of Bayom Hazeh? Is that Yom represented the light and the love, he said, but basically all the light coming from Chokhmah, and Zeh represents the revelation of that light, like Moshe who prophesies with the word Zeh. Other way around, sorry. Zeh represented the Chokhmah associated with Moshe, and Yom is light. So it's Yom Hazeh is the idea of bringing that bittul to light. And why was that? Great, so let's do that again. That Rosh Chodesh was called by the name Yom Hazeh. Why? Because first of all, Yom Hazeh, Zeh represents Chokhmah. Yom represents revealing that Chokhmah. Why is that connected with Rosh Chodesh? And specifically Rosh Chodesh Sivan? Because Rosh Chodesh is the idea of the new presence of the moon after it's been completely gone from the sky. And that represents like this tiny bittul of making yourself small, and then from that point of becoming nothing, you can then reveal the love and the light that's coming from above you. The chokhmah comes to a state of revelation after the moon makes itself go away. And why was this so necessary that we had a Rosh Chodesh preparation before we received the Torah? Because the whole Torah is basically something which is beyond us. It's Hashem. And in order to even be shaykh to bring it into the world, it requires a bittul on the part of the creation. And therefore the first preparation, there was 6 days of preparation in order to get to the Torah. The first one was the Indian of Bayom Hazeh, which is the notion of this bittul. That basically all the Torah is just Hashem working through us, requiring us to start off by taking ourselves out of the way. And then we said the same thing is true with mitzvahs. That's why in the bracha of every mitzvah it says Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvosav, right? That it's really his mitzvah. First of all, before you do any mitzvah, you say a bracha, which the idea of a bracha is basically just showing that there's something being drawn down here. It's not you performing this act, it's you're getting out of the way of something coming down. And then we say Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvosav. Mitzvosav means his mitzvah, which means it's him coming out through you. And again, that's a preparation that must be taken before you do any Torah or any mitzvah. This is the idea of bittul, because you're really accessing something much, much higher.
That's different with making a bracha on food?
It's not a mitzvah to eat.
No, but the way you just described it didn't, I don't know, does that fit?
No, because we don't say Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvosav when we make a bracha.
Okay.
That's only a mitzvahs.
Okay.
But there is some kind of a drawing down. I mean, in a perfect world, you could be in this bittul even in your mundane affairs for sure, because it's all being done l'shem shamayim. So there's still like an idea of getting out of the way, even like a tzaddik's, every single action that he does, even when he eats, when he sleeps, it's all like God coming through him. So there is such a concept basically, but it's just, it's not a mitzvah per se. Okay. So I think that's it. Now, let's go on to Daled, yeah? Inside. So he says, "V'hinei b'ichdei lavo le'inyan habitul." In order to come to the state of bitul,
Where's Daled?
Daled is right after Gimel, before Hey. Ratio Tet. You got one? There's a few more actually. Is there another one for your own?
Yeah, a whole bunch.
love it. Ellie, you want to take a copy?
No, I'm gonna write it down. I boycott the waste of black.
Okay. Dalit. V'hinei b'chdei lavo le'inyan habitul. In order to come to this bitul, or move on, it's understood. Shezeu alidei inyan his bonanus. It can only come about through meditation. To think about it. It's not natural state, basically, to not be yourself. V'kamo she'alidei his bonanus, ba'im lidei hachlata b'chol inyani Torah mitzvaseh. And just like through meditation, thinking deeply about the matters, you come to any decision when it comes to the inyan of Torah and mitzvahs. In other words, you don't just like automatically do holy things. You have to sort of consider it, think about the way it, against the truth versus how you're living your life. And you come to these good decisions like after a good fabring and after some meditation. So like anything, that level of bitul and putting yourself on the side is not a natural thing. It comes from deep reflection. Kabbalah's ol malchus shamayim. The idea of taking upon yourself the yoke of heaven. The same is true regarding bitul, etc. Amnam, however, when it comes to meditation, shinyano besfiros hu bechinas bina, where in general, where's the function of meditation come from in our soul powers is bina. That's why the word his bonanus is the same word as bina, right? Because it's that's what your bina does. It thinks. It basically puts two and two together, and it starts to, build up ideas and come to new realizations. That's why bonus literally means to build. That's what I'm saying. When I say meditation, I just want to be clear. It's not just like clearing your mind and sort of going out in the fields. Meditation means to build, and it means you're building up ideas. You put, the facts together on the ground. There is a God. The Torah is real. There's a Rabbi. He wants me to do things. What am I doing with myself right now? I'm wasting my time. Is it good for me? Is it bad for me? Like, it's basically a thinking process. It doesn't have to be so complicated like you're being misbonen on infinite things. You can come to good decisions in your life. And the same thing, you can come to decisions about taking yourself out of the picture. You realize, would I rather have my own mishugas, or would I rather basically be a channel for the Eibishter?
But you think to get to this place of bitul, you want to, not be thinking in a way.
Well, that's what he's saying, actually. That's what he's saying. He's basically getting to this point that when it comes to his bonus, there's a little bit of a built-in, wrench in the works.
To do bitul, you have to make a conscious decision, and that's what his bonus is.
Yes, but what Ephraim is saying is that, no, 100%, that's the first thing he says. It's not going to happen by yourself. But then, so what? Maybe I should just meditate and clear my mind. So the point is that, no, you can't really start like that, because you have to really put the ideas together. In other words, there is a you involved. In other words, but the truth is like lying in between what both you guys are saying. There's a you involved, and that's like a intrinsic stira, contradiction to the process you're trying to reach, is that the way to reach it is by being misbonen, which it puts you in the game. That's what he's saying, that his bonus comes from bina, and bina is not a total bitul. That's what we're going to say now.
It's also bittul to think like holy ideas versus my ideas. That's also a form of bittul.
It's true, but even getting to the point where you're thinking holy ideas, that's not necessarily the hisbonenus that we're after. It's like you're trying to get yourself to make decisions to do holy ideas. It's like you're wrestling. This type of hisbonenus that he's talking about here could be like you're wrestling with your Yetzer Hara. Okay, it's better than just like watching TV, I guess. But the idea is that you're not yet made the decision. Just like you have to make a decision in a hachlata to take on something in your life, in holiness, you have to make that decision to be bittul, But there's a problem there, because you're making the decision to be bittul, there's a you. So we're going to get out of this problem. Anyway, the real meditation comes from the sphere of bina. He's bonus lashon bina. Hare mitzara seichel shebezeh naise inyan shel rash v'yispalus. So he says the problem is that because you're using your seichel, there's a general inyan of noise and excitement, basically. Right? In other words, you get worked up when you start thinking. You guys okay? Can I get you a copy? Okay. If I had one, you'd be the first one to take it. No, there is. Here, this is right here. So he says, mitzad ha-seichel shebezeh, and it was because their process requires you using your mind, it's your functions, your faculties, your powers. It's like your talents, basically. So it's exciting, and you get yourself in the game. There's a certain raj, a certain being worked up. Shezeu hepech inyan habitul, which is in fact the opposite of the inyan of bitul. Think about, for example, what we're saying when he came to listening to the Rav. We said if you even think about what the Rav is saying for a second in the middle of the class, like you ruined it. You're not bitul anymore. You're not receiving. So anytime you're going to put a step forward to use your mind, you're in there. So that's not bitul. But the problem is you can't get to bitul unless you think about it and sort of make good decisions in that vein, which requires using your mind. So it's basically a catch-22 here. Okay, so we're sort of right on track. He says it's understood. The example of this is explained in the Hemshech of Basi Lagani. Hemshech again is this series of mimers from the Frierdiker Rebbe regarding the student who receives from his teacher. Kasher be'eis hashpas harav, and he quotes that at the time of receiving from the Rav, are you choshev maharher ba'sagas ha'inyan? You're thinking and thinking over the grasping the concept, and that's not good. The truth is, at the time of action, when you're actually receiving, rak lekabel, you need only to receive divrei harav, the words of the Rav. If you want to be misbonen, it can't be at the time when you're trying to be bitul. You only afterwards have to think b'davar hasagas ha'inyan regarding what the thing means and build up the ideas and sort of internalize it with your own bina. Because in order to be a vessel to receive, you need to be holding by a level of what's called an empty vessel. The kli rekan machzik, because only an empty vessel can receive. And if you're thinking over, choshev and mahar her is like two of the same words, sort of mean the same thing. But sagas ha'inyan, regarding grasping the inyan, be'eis hashpas harav, when it comes to him actually giving over the idea to you, azai eno kli rekan, so at that moment then you're not an empty vessel. You have a lot of noise and excitement going on in your head from your power of bina. Because your power of intellect and understanding, v'asaga and grasping, shalo of his, poel pulaso, it's doing its thing, right? It's affecting its job, and that is all about you, right? It's not a reception. Therefore, at that moment when you're having bina going on, you really can't be a vessel that holds, but ofen shel shleimus, in a whole way. I mean, maybe a little bit will come in, but you can't really just take in the whole idea. You're not bitul, you're blocking it. When we then move on, so from here it comes out, sheis bonus bechinas bina, that the level that this process of his bonus, which is bina, shepoelis is a bitul, that affects the bitul, hirak haschalas a bitul. This obviously is not the whole journey. In other words, you can't attain bitul without thinking about it. It won't just happen by itself. But the problem is that when you're thinking about it, you're not in a state of bitul. What do? You got to start somewhere. Basically, that level of bina, like Baruch was saying, it's pretty good. Yeah. You were saying, in other words, you're still thinking about God. Yeah. You're sort of on the way to mevatling yourself, but the process of mevatling yourself sort of is all about you. Okay. It's a little bit of a problem. It's definitely not the truth, but it's a necessary first step. You're starting with yourself in a coarse way. It's like hiskafia versus hishapcha. You're starting with yourself in a coarse way, trying to make yourself less coarse, and that's far from basically not being coarse. Bechinas azeres garma, and that's the first level of what Malchus does. It makes herself small. It doesn't make herself go away. It's not a true bittul, but you can make yourself small. It's like a person who's involved in self-help, or dieting or exercising. The problem is that they feel like they're unhealthy. They feel like they're too big. They feel like they're in trouble. So they're working on themselves and they're concentrating on themselves. It's just that it's a better way to concentrate on yourself than to concentrate on fixing yourself than just concentrating on giving yourself into your taivas. But you're still concentrating on yourself. it's not like you've achieved freedom from yourself. It's just that your self is now focused on making itself smaller instead of just letting itself expand.
Well, it's one step.
It's a step. It's actually a necessary step. There's no other way to do it. You must start there.
So we're still talking about the steps to
Bitul.
of Malchut,
Mm-hmm.
of Malchut reaching this.
Yeah, it's all about this Dalid reaching ever and ever higher phases of Bitul. And now we're saying that we already mentioned to begin with, there's two steps: making yourself small and then having nothing of your own. So he's now basically putting the words with the formula. This, what we just talked about, the Bina first step, is called Azir Atma, Agarma. It's called making yourself small, not making yourself disappear. And the process of making yourself small is like ever more emphasizing self. But at least it's going in the right direction. In a certain sense, I mean, all this is, it's brought down in so many different ways in so many different places, but the idea is that there's two levels of divine meditation in general. There's meditating on how Hashem made the worlds, and that all the world is nothing but Hashem. And then there's the meditation that God is completely beyond the worlds, right? That there is no world. There's basically the Or Ein Sof before the worlds were ever created, and it's still there, and you can go access that place. So the difference is that whenever you're meditating on the godliness that makes the worlds, in other words, you can't really ever nullify yourself through and through. We've talked about this before, because even though what you've done is you made yourself a godly existence instead of a separated existence, because you recognize that everything that you are is His life force flowing into you, but Hashem Himself has a part of Him which is making the worlds. And even though that could be in a state of klippa, where the worlds think that they got there by themselves, or it could be a state of kedusha, that the worlds are recognizing that they're nullified to Him. Either way, it's an aspect of godliness which is involved in making the world. So if you're holding by that level and that level alone, you can never not experience existence. You can never basically be batul b'metzias, because you're dealing with a level of divine light which recognizes your existence. We talked about this also when we spoke about Moshe Rabbeinu in the Midbar. That when you're going to go out and fight with the enemy, even if you're going to scatter the enemy, that's basically is a perfect example of what we're talking about right now. Remember, Moshe went into the desert with the ark, and vayafutzu oivecha vayanusu misanecha. We said that he scattered his enemies. There was a certain level of Moshe bringing godliness into the state of the klippas and making them disappear. But he didn't make them really disappear. He just made them scatter. And why was Moshe's all of his efforts unable to make the klippas go away and go into a full state of bitul? Because he went into their place in order to nullify them. Unlike Shlomo, if you recall, that everything came to him. When you go into their place, how can you simultaneously nullify them out of existence when you're busy sitting in their place? Like your presence there is recognizing their existence. All you can do is tame their existence and make it an existence which will basically be godly, but you can't take away the existence of the klippas when you're busy in the midbar. The same thing is true with this type of meditation. It's exactly the same story. You're trying to get bitul, but your aim of getting bitul is to think about yourself, basically, and decisions that you need to make. How you're going to really, truly be out of yourself when you're in the land of the enemy, so to speak. You're working with Bina, which is it's just like a place that automatically recognizes yourself, and you can never get out of it. So it's a loud sound of your own seichel. So this is a first step towards bitul. But it's impossible to truly find shleimus of bitul through meditation of that sense.
Isn't that why we say that we learn strictly about godliness straight? Because then the person doesn't exist.
So that's what I'm saying. Like Moshe, his Indian was like nigla, basically, right?
Yeah.
That's what. So what is nigla? Nigla is a great thing, but the problem with nigla is that it's speaking about the world. Tithes, and walls and fences you have to build between your neighbors. I mean, it's all Torah. So it takes that world and it takes it out of the defunct level of fighting with your neighbor and shows you the dinim in order to make peace and bring a Torah world. But it's all eventually talking about the world. So as much as you're going to negate it, you can't get out of the world when you're learning nigla.
Right, yeah.
So the idea of Chassidus then is what is the topic of Chassidus? Things that are beyond the world. So therefore, it's like you can be holding by a place which you're not in. Basically, you're discussing a level of divinity which you don't exist in, which is a neat trick, and it basically brings you out of your existence. So this is the difference between Bina and Chochmah, basically. Aval Tachlis, the purpose of making yourself small is that the purpose that it's achareze is that afterwards Yagil Shlimus a bitul. You can get to the full bitul, Bechinas Leisla Migar Maklum. The idea that you really have nothing left. There's no more. The true student sitting by the Rav in a state of perfect reception. And the idea behind this, Kafish Mevar Admaraim Tzoi, as the Middle Rebbe explains with Bira Zohar, in his sefer called Bira Zohar, explanations of the Zohar, Ala pasik v'gam amna achosi bas avihi ach lo bas imi tehili leisha. So basically, he's talking about a little trick that he made with Sarah, and he said that she's his sister, and then he justifies himself by saying this pasik. However, achosi bas avihi. The truth is, she's my sister, the daughter of my father. Ach lo bas imi, but not the daughter of my mother, and such a person, B'nai Noach, were allowed to marry. V'tehili li isha. Therefore, she was my wife.
Is this half sister?
What's that?
Is this half sister?
Yeah, basically what we call a half sister. The father. So the idea is, now I told you guys a couple times, there's a mimer that they wrote right before this one, like in the same year, so there he kind of goes into this a little bit more, but in short, let's read it the last night. He'll give us the idea what he's trying to get out of this. Shayichud v'hashpa mirav the Talmud, that the unification and the influence from student to teacher, einu yechol liyos mitzad b'chinas bas imi. It can't come from a level of what's called the daughter of my mother. What's the mother? Bina. Shuvin yizbonus de Bina. What Avraham, who represents basically the Chochmah, right? And the idea is that he was talking about Sarah and the unification between him and his wife. She's a Isha to me. She's my wife. What's the meaning of an Isha? It's a unification. What's the unification that this is a mashal for? The unification between teacher and student. They're trying to basically form this perfect unity where the full gamut of the Rebbe is able to enter into this inside of the mind of the Chassid. He's able to receive, like we talked about the other day. The Rebbe became his father-in-law. There was like a perfect fusion of the two entities because of the bitul that the Rebbe was. So that's what Avram is talking about, his wife. What's the bitul that takes place between Avram and Sarah is like a Rebbe and a Chassid, basically. And he's saying she was the daughter of my father, not the daughter of my mother. Father represents Chochmah, mother represents Bina. This is Avram and Sarah.
Wasn't
Right?
Sarah the daughter of
Haran.
Nimrod?
Haran?
What was it?
No, not Haran.
Who threw him in the fire?
Yeah, Nimrod.
Wasn't she the daughter of Nimrod?
No, she's
No.
the daughter of Haran.
The daughter of Haran. And Terach. So Terach was.
Brother's daughter.
Yeah. Terach was. Well, you want to go into this lineage right now? So I'm going to avoid this. Terach was Avram's father. And basically, Avram and Haran were born from that, right? And Haran had a daughter named Sarah, right?
Okay.
No?
So she was Lot's sister?
Why, Haran was Lot?
Was his father?
Wait, Haran was Lot's father?
He was his nephew. He was Avram's nephew.
From the same
She
brother?
was his niece.
She was his niece.
Lot's father was Haran also?
But Haran had been more clever when he was called the Yisrael Torah.
Lod was
the
one
end.
of the.
It's the end of the Lech Lecha right at the end there.
Alright, we'll think about Lot in a second. But the point is that therefore, Avram's father was Terach, and even though her father wasn't Terach, it's not uncommon, it says, for a daughter, for a granddaughter to be called the daughter.
Okay.
Right? So basically Terach was not her actual father, but he was like her father, because he was his grandfather.
Makes sense.
Right? But it was